Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Evolving Democracy, our weekly live stream where we talk about how to move towards a democracy we really want to see. Today is episode 5, and the title is Political Rest Stop Number 1. And we named it number 1 because we have a feeling people are going to need more rest stops than just one. And so, what are we talking about today? We're talking about how to keep going on the journey, how to not get overwhelmed. Well, you may get overwhelmed, but then how to recover and how to just keep going and moving or keep swimming, as they say, so you don't end up getting stalled or giving up or getting completely overwhelmed and quitting. So, today we're really going to sort of double down on some thoughts around how to manage the overwhelm, how to work through what seems difficult, and how to just keep going. So, what are your thoughts, Joni?
Well, I think we should be honest about why we came up with this, which was this week, both of us felt overwhelmed. Had that feeling of this is crazy town. I was researching some things to possibly talk about, and I was looking at a documentary that someone I know sent to me who she had been part of the Doge cuts to HHS, I think. And this was a documentary that one of her co-workers was in. And it was about a half hour long. And it just made me go, oh no, just all this talent and just all this waste. And then, because I guess I'm a glutton for punishment, I started looking at the money waste, because that was another option. I was like, well, we could talk about
Rabbit
that too.
holes.
I was like, oh no, I can't. I'm overwhelmed and feeling not quite hopeless. I don't like going to hopeless, but just feeling, how do we keep doing this? And the good part is I was able to talk to Christy. And one of the things about this partnership we have is that we're able to keep each other going, because it really hasn't happened that we're both of us are at that same level at the same time.
It was pretty close this week, which is why we're having this. Because to segue over to my side, I watched a webinar with Ruth Ben Ghiat and I think he's a former FBI guy. Very good, very knowledgeable, but it was so depressing. I mean, I normally stay in the optimistic place, but when I watched it, I was like, oh no. And so this week coincided these two things. I mean, there's been plenty of crazy weeks, but it just happened that we consumed something that made us go, oh no, like we're in real trouble,
Yeah.
which is, of course, what they want us to do. So this is our way to bounce back and come back and say, oh yeah, what do we need to do for ourselves in these scenarios? Do we need time away? Do we need to soothe our nervous systems? Do we need to pace ourselves? Do we need to be careful about the sources where we get information? There's like a whole bunch of ways in which we can take care of ourselves under these situations. And I certainly hear people go, I should stay informed. It's important
Mhm.
for me to stay informed. Well, if it's a should, is that being appropriately responsible? Or is the appropriate responsibility toward yourself to say, what can I take on right now? What feels good to me? Where do I feel like I can make an impact? And when do I need to rejuvenate and recharge and renew and come back fresh? Because the battle's not going away. It'll
Yeah.
be here when we get back. And even if we're at half power, that's still something. So this is sort of staying in for the long haul. How do we keep going and going as we navigate this?
And it's one of the things that was an unfortunate lesson I learned growing up, was that other people have it worse. You shouldn't be complaining about this because other people are struggling more. So why do you feel like you can take a break because there are other people who can't? And that's true. And we do have to remember our privilege. We are not in my neighborhood. I am not wrestling with immigration raids. And there's so many things that are so much worse. But the question becomes, do I help any of that by letting myself get depleted, by letting myself get overwhelmed and feeling like I can't make a difference. But if I take this break, then maybe I can come back refreshed, renewed, with better ideas. Because when you get yourself stressed out and overwhelmed, you don't have good ideas. You don't listen to your intuition. You don't see maybe that there's this one thing that you could do to help. And before I turn it back over to Christy, what just popped into my head was that old tale about the young child throwing starfish back into the ocean. Yeah, no, you're not going to fix everything, but you may help that one starfish, that one person, makes one person's life better. And in my opinion, that's a good day.
Absolutely. And we cannot suffer enough to relieve someone else's suffering. It doesn't work that way. To relieve suffering in general, we have to do what we need to do for ourselves as best we can, bearing in mind that we are privileged from the perspective that there are people that are suffering more. And for us to be able to stay with where can I make the biggest impact? How do I stay the most present with what's going on? How do I not fight reality from the perspective of like, this is actually happening? You know, that's part of where our stress comes from. Is like, this can't be happening, and this is bad, and this is wrong, and oh no. It's like, yes, it's awful, but it is happening. If you can acknowledge that it's happening and then say, and what can I do to make a
Mhm.
future better so that that reality, I won't want to be fighting that reality. I might be like, oh, wow, this is so much better than it was before. That I think is really about this renewal of how do we keep coming back by saying, all right, this is the current circumstances, don't love them at all, but I can see over here, there's something I really do want, and just keep focusing on what even micro movement we can make toward that. And sometimes a micro movement is going to be rest or calling a friend or bookmarking something because you don't feel like you can read it now, but you will read it later. That's sort of a commitment to yourself that you're going to be the best steward of your energy in order to be as effective as possible in this ongoing craziness.
Well, and it also comes down to, do I have to know? Like I got this book from the library a couple weeks ago that was talking about Christian nationalism starting in the 1940s.
Oh,
I started, and I was reading it, and I started getting so angry. And if you know me and know my spiritual geography work, you know why this makes me mad, and it makes my hair go on fire. But I stopped and said, do I really need to know? Do I really need to know how it started? I know where we are, or I know somewhat of where we are, and that's the important thing. So I took the book back to the library. It's like, this is not something I need to subject myself to.
I did something similar with Ruth Ben Ghiat's Strongman book. She's written a book all about different dictators over the years. And I thought it would be good because I could know. Well, I wanted to see like how things got better was really my motivation. So I ended up skipping a whole bunch of the middle because it was so awful. And I went to the end and I was like, show me the good parts. Show me how things resolved. It was still a little stressful, but it was like, okay, I want to see not the ooey awful middle, but the fact that there's hope, that there's something at the other side that really shows that humanity can redeem itself, even in the darkest of times. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here to give ourselves permission to say, this works for me and this doesn't. Like, I'll talk to people about who they read. I think this is an important part of this conversation is what sources do you consume information from? And do you notice, do you tune in? How do you feel after you read them? Like, we know
Mm-hmm.
the baseline news is hard, but different people present it differently. And so some of those sources I just cannot listen to. People that just want to stoke the fire and like you should be terrified. Like, okay, I don't need that stoked. I can do that on my own. I want people that are like, all right, these are the facts and this is what we can do about it. And oh, here's some bright spots. Like Jess Craven of Chop Wood Carry Water every Sunday puts out a what is it? Like best best news. I forget what she calls it, but it's like, okay, I want to read that every week. It's not saying that everything's better and all is fine. It's just giving concrete example after concrete example of things that are positive, things that are pointing towards preserving our democracy, making our democracy better, heading toward equity and inclusion, like just making this a better place for all of us. And so I don't read everything she writes, but I do make sure I read everything she puts out there on Sunday. She's on Substack and also on Blue Sky. I definitely read the parts that fuel me to help me keep going, because every little bit I can do, like right now we have 5 viewers, and welcome to our new viewer, by the way. We aren't having a huge impact, but we are having some impact, and it feels good to us. And who knows who might be impacted by it. And that just keeps us going and keeps, everyone who does their little part. Heather Cox Richardson talks about find your thing and do your thing, because that is going to make the difference.
Yeah. And everyone's thing is different. Ben said in the chat a little while ago, it's a group effort. So what I can do is not what someone else can do. And if you lean into your own strengths, which should correspond with your interests, then it can help. You don't have to do everything. Decades ago, someone told me that if I agreed to do something I didn't feel that I was being led to do, then I was actually enabling the person who was supposed to step up from stepping up. And that little piece of advice has been so freeing for me over the years, because it says, yeah, I don't feel like I'm the right person to do that. And yes, we do have to watch ourselves to make sure that we're not doing it, not stepping up because we're afraid, or we're not stepping up because of some other reason that talks about our own ego, our own barriers to stepping up. But if you are honestly looking at, is this something that I should be doing? Is this a good use of my time? And you come back with no, then knowing that opening that up is freeing someone else from looking at that same issue and saying, yes, this is mine. And that person who owns that issue is going to do it far better than you ever could.
And it also reminds me, and I think and I'm sure there are lots of stories for this, how, one person steps back and another person steps forward. Like we pass off the baton as needed because, okay, I'm kind of worn out. Can you take this? And the next person, because there's so many of us, we can definitely do that, which is very different than like, well, I'm just going to stand on the sidelines, getting emotional about this because this is important to me. I'm just going to stand on the sidelines and do nothing. Instead, it's like, let's do this in a way we can pace ourselves. And so you can step up and I can step back, and it's like taking shifts almost around the clock, if you will, in a hospital where someone's always there, but it's not always the same person there. But you're all part of that group, like Ben described, of doing something collectively. Which the more people we have, obviously, the more we can do that shifting as needed. Which someone who's flagging can get assistance, and someone who's like super engaged, inspired, can go do their thing, and we just keep like in the rotation and keep saying, yeah, I'm available, but not today, or I'm available, but I'm ready tomorrow, and just keep doing the thing. So we have our weekly protest at our MAGA representative's office on Saturday mornings, and they've called it off for the summer, and because it gets so hot here in Tucson. But I was so happy to hear, actually, Claudia is the person that told me that some diehards are going to keep showing up anyway. They're going to brave the heat, and I'm going to try tomorrow. I think if I have the time, I'm going to try tomorrow, brave the heat, and go, you know what? This matters to me, and I'm going to be here for a while. And just keep going, and just keep going as best you can. And someone who can't handle the heat, maybe they just don't show up for a while. And then when it gets cooler, they go, okay, now we can come back. Or they go in the driving protests when those are available. So this is like, can we be really creative? I love that part of what's going on with this. How can we be really creative to solve problems, to figure our way through, to support each other, to be as positive and resolute as possible as we keep moving forward and using every tool we can to support us as we do this. This is creative times. I do love that part.
And we call this rest stop, and we numbered it because we imagine we're going to be doing more of these because it's important for us to remember to breathe. And in thinking about this, I thought about my own road trips. And I drive from Maryland to Michigan nearly every summer. And some of the rest stops are not very restful. They're just a place to pee and to, sell junk food.
Never thought I'd heard that phrase on our live stream. But yes, carry on.
But then once I cross from Ohio into Michigan, the rest stops are restful. They're in nature. So there's shade, there's trees, there's green. They're not huge. They're more frequent. And that sense of being able to stop with some regularity and know what feeds your soul. So for me, that being in the green, being in nature, being with the trees, and Michigan's a beautiful state. So it's beautiful. It feeds my soul. And there's so many things that can feed our souls that aren't that time consuming if we remember to do it. Going outside, putting your feet in the grass, which has some energetic benefits too, but just the sense of knowing that there's more in the world than what we're looking at. And that's what being in nature does for me, which it does for so many people, knowing there's more.
It's funny because you're making me think. So people don't know this necessarily about us, but both of us went to graduate school at University of Michigan. So we both know Michigan. I'm in Arizona, she's in Maryland, but we definitely know Michigan. And the whole idea of the rest stop is really genius because it's just a pause. It's just temporary. You're not going to spend like all day there. It's brief. You might have lunch at a picnic table if you have a nice rest area, but you're going to move on. You're going to get back on track. You know where you're headed. You have a destination and you're going to go there. Back in the old days, of course, we might look at the map and make sure we're on the right track and we're on the right route and so on. But we know we're not doing a U-turn. We're not like, we're going to go back the other way. We're like, nope, we're headed and we're just taking a rest, taking a pause, getting refueled, if you will, for ourselves. Sometimes it's also your car so that you can go on with the journey. So it's a really great metaphor for what we're talking about since it's just temporary. And similarly, I was thinking about the fact that emotions rise and fall in about 90 seconds if they're not interfered with, if they're not perpetuated. So can we also pause when some feeling comes up of like, oh no, or the overwhelm or whatever? Can we be with, oh, I'm noticing I'm feeling overwhelmed. But if I don't try to fight it, I can let it hopefully rise and fall in those 90 seconds and feel some relief. Some of this is really nervous system regulation around, what can I do for myself in the moment just to keep going on, just to keep showing up for life, much less for political life, which is a totally different beast, of course. Yeah, I think we're onto something here.
Well, and Christy talked about some of the people she gets information from and finds helpful. Now, over the past 2 weeks, I have unsubscribed to a number of people where
Genius.
I didn't feel like they were helping me. That it was just too rabid, and I want information, but I don't want it to be delivered in a way that's nasty. There's enough of that. I don't need that in my information consumption. So I've unsubscribed. I gave myself permission to unsubscribe from some of those that I found too overwhelming. But I still have my resources. There's one that I've got my husband on too, which is on YouTube. It's called Belle of the Ranch. She's got good she's not going to present something that isn't fact checked. And what's good about her is she's a former army nurse, and and they've got a lot of contacts. And when she will read a comment that's coming from someone who's kind of rabid in their opinions, and she will just like stare at the camera, because those who are following her for a while know her background and know she knows what she's talking about. She was doing medevac flights on choppers and airplanes. She knows what she's talking about when she's talking about being in a war zone and helping troops. So that is one that I do recommend. She doesn't go. She can get a little pointed sometimes, but mostly she's level in her speaking, and I appreciate that. I appreciate her.
This is very interesting. You've made me think of something I've not thought of before. Back in the day when news was news, it was mostly factual. I mean, there might be a little bit of a hint of how a newspaper leaned, but as long as you weren't on the op-ed, you weren't in the opinion editorial area, it was pretty much the facts. And now there's so much skew and so much bias and so much, I don't know, trying to make things more impactful, like you want more viewers, you want to be an influencer, whatever. There can be this like sense of sensationalism. And how many times have you seen the headlines that are like, something radical happened, you have to go see this, and you go look and you're like, oh, clickbait, like that. Whoever heard of clickbait? I mean, you didn't get newspaper bait. I accidentally bought the wrong paper because I fell for this. I mean, yeah, they were crazy, weird little magazines and stuff, but for the most part, news was news. And so now we have to add our own discernment around, is this legitimate, first of all? Is this helpful for me and my nervous system? And then how much of this do I need to consume? Because when you think about it, many, many people are reporting the same things with a slightly different twist. Do I need to hear it 5 times? Or is once or maybe twice sufficient to get me what I need to know? And do I need to know every nuance in order to say, Saturday I'm going to protest. This week I'm putting up the signs in my yard that say the candidate I want. The things we're doing probably aren't a direct response to everything that hits the news because we don't have that role. If you're a lawyer who does litigation and you know something's probably coming and you've prepared everything so you can file immediately, all right, you're on the front lines. But for most of us, we're going to do smaller, more measured, more paced sort of ththings that we can do on our own time, on our own leisure. We don't have to be like, oh, I have to do the thing right now. Sometimes they want you to call your reps right away or whatever, but my rep is utterly unresponsive. So I don't really feel that compelled anymore because he's just going to send me a lying letter back about how wonderful he is. So, but that reminds me, I sent Joni a video from our Secretary of State here in Arizona. There is some Arizona stuff in it, but this guy is like a super optimist. It's great. He's like, this is an opportunity. I'm so excited to be part of making history. Like, oh, okay. I want whatever you're drinking because it's really good. And he's very enthusiastic and he's very upbeat about where we are and what we're doing. Well, he said yesterday when I listened to it, it was last week that it was broadcast, but I listened to it last week or yesterday, and he's like, the representative we want, Joanna Mendoza, he's like, he basically said she's going to trounce our guy, is his prediction. I'm like, yes, I'm so happy. Like, you just made my day. I like to hear that because, like, okay, that'll keep me going for a while. That's the thing. I think some of these are like, where can you get a shot in the arm? That'll be part of what helps keep you going by being able to be enthused and excited about something, which then keeps you going, keeps the momentum going.
About someone too. We can find even in politics, we can find people that we can get behind. We can find in the activist space, we can find people that we admire, that we respect. And keeping our eyes on that, there are good humans working on
Mm,
this.
so many.
Yeah, and another thing that Heather Cox Richardson says is that the people who were making history, I don't know if this is her or Joanne Freeman, people who were making history didn't know they were making history, really.
Right. I've heard it from
They
both of them.
were doing the next thing that needed to be done.
Right.
They didn't know the outcome, they didn't know
Mm-mm.
where this was going.
Right.
And Heather Cox Richardson said recently, I don't remember when, she knows how this ends. She doesn't know when it ends, but she knows at the end of this that the authoritarianism will be over because that's how it has always ended.
Right. There is, yeah, that is one of the certainties. What that's the amazing thing about having an historian on hand to go, yeah, this has a cycle. We don't know the length, but it has a definite end, which is so encouraging that you're not going to be stuck here forever. I mean, look at Viktor Orban. He, that era, that cycle has completed. He's out and they're doing reparations and they allowed them to have a pride parade. Like these are not trivial things because this is people being part of the system that were being excluded before. They're now being welcomed back in. And that's so important in an authoritarian situation where there's the othering and those people are not okay. So we're just like bringing people back in. And that's what I love seeing with some of the work that people do here is let's bring in as many people as we can. Let's keep us connected in the way we most can do that. So yeah, there's a camaraderie, there's a collective uplifting, there's a way in which we become so much bigger than our individual contribution, which is inspiring.
And we each are growing and learning through this too. So it's not just this outcome that we want, we are becoming that outcome. And sometimes it takes destroying something for it to grow again. And this is like a fire, a natural fire going through a forest. Sometimes that's how the new growth comes. So we always try to keep in mind what is on the other side that we're aiming for. It's that sense of inclusion Christy was talking about, this sense that everyone matters, due process of law, which we talked about before. All of that is what we want on the other side. One of the analogies that I used when Christy and I were talking about this is that of being in a choir. Now, first of all, it's a group. And this, you may have heard this before, but I think it bears repeating. In a choir, you're in sections. So there's however many people singing the same part. And sometimes a composer will tell you where to breathe. Sometimes there's natural pauses. But when there isn't, what you learn in a choir is to take your turn for taking a breath. So you don't do it when the people on either side of you do. You take it when you need it, but the others are still going. So the people watching don't know at all what's going on. It just becomes this seamless, beautiful sound. That's what we're going for in this resistance movement. Those looking from the outside won't know you're taking a rest. But what they will know is that your contribution gets amped up when you do. When you do look after yourself, when you do find the opportunity to breathe, find the opportunity to refresh so that you come back renewed with better ideas and more strength for this journey, because it is a marathon.
Absolutely. And you made me think of if we try to overdo, like if you tried, I'm not going to take a breath, I'm not going to take a breath, I'm not going to, all of a sudden you're like in the middle of the choir. It would be like, oh, that person doesn't have a good sense of when they need to be refreshed. We don't want to be to the point where we're gasping. We want to have it be natural and just be something that can fit into our lives. Again,
Yeah.
this is a marathon, not a sprint. So can we breathe and take care of ourselves in every moment?
And we appreciate you, and we want you to take care of yourselves. We want us all to be part of this pro-democracy movement that will come out on top in the end. And until then, let's put love into action together.
Together. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Bye.
coming.